What happens when you're flying first class to celebrate the biggest deal of your life? A deal for your own brand of luxury champagne. And the flight attendant refuses to serve it to you. She looks you in the eye, sees a young black woman, and decides you're not worthy of the very bottle that has your soul poured into it. This isn't just a story about bad customer service. It's a story about prejudice at 35,000 feet, a shocking reveal that silenced an entire airplane, and a trail of karma so devastatingly precise it had to be real. Stay with me, because the story of Serafina James and flight attendant Brenda Walsh is about to unfold. And trust me, the landing is the most turbulent part. The low, contented hum of the Boeing 777 engine was a sound Serafina James usually associated with victory. Today, however, it was merely the backdrop to a bone-deep weariness that had settled into her marrow. She was flying Transatlantic Air Flight 101 from JFK to London Heathrow, nestled into the plush cocoon of Seat 2J in the first-class cabin. At 29, Serafina had earned this seat 1,000 times over. She wasn't an heiress or a celebrity in the traditional sense. She was a creator, a visionary. 5 years ago, she had poured her life savings, her grief over losing her father, and her passion for viticulture into a small vineyard in Northern California. The result was Ori Wines, and its crown jewel, the Ori Reserve Brut. The bottle was a work of art. Sleek, dark glass with a minimalist cream label. The only flourish was a small, embossed golden hummingbird, its wings mid-flutter. It was her father's favorite bird. That hummingbird was now a symbol of black excellence in a world dominated by centuries-old French houses. And just yesterday she had signed a landmark distribution deal with one of London's most prestigious luxury hotel chains, the Beaumont Group. This trip was a victory lap, and a visit to her mother whose health had recently taken a fragile turn. Serafina was dressed for comfort, not to impress. Black Lululemon leggings, an oversized cashmere sweater from a boutique in Soho, and a pair of simple white sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat puff, and aside from a pair of diamond studs, a gift to herself after her first profitable year, she wore no jewelry. She looked like a student, perhaps, or a young artist. She did not look in the eyes of some like she belonged in Seat 2J. One of those people was Brenda Walsh. Brenda was a senior flight attendant, a purser, as she liked to remind the younger crew. She had been flying for 26 years. Her uniform was immaculate, her blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of professional stillness, and her smile was a thin, practiced line that never quite reached her eyes. Brenda saw the world in a rigid order of haves and have-nots, of those who belonged and those who were just passing through. She prided herself on being able to spot the upgrades, the points flyers, the ones who didn't truly fit the first-class mold. And as she surveyed her cabin before takeoff, her eyes lingered on Serafina. She saw the casual attire, the youth, the race. Her internal calculus clicked into a familiar, ugly algorithm. Probably a musician, she thought, with a flicker of disdain. Or one of those influencer types who got a lucky upgrade. The boarding door hissed shut, and the safety demonstration began. Serafina barely noticed her mind replaying the satisfying scratch of her pen on the contract. She could already picture the Ori Reserve Brut chilling in the ice buckets at the Beaumont's exclusive rooftop bar. As the plane climbed through the clouds, puncturing the gray New York sky to find the endless blue above the seatbelt sign pinged off. A younger, brighter flight attendant named Chloe began to move through the cabin, her smile genuine. "Can I get you something to drink before the meal service?" Chloe asked the man in 2F, a portly gentleman in a pinstripe suit. "Scotch double no ice," he grunted, not looking up from his Wall Street Journal. When Chloe reached Serafina, she offered a warm greeting. "Welcome aboard. Anything to start?" "Yes, thank you," Serafina said, a real smile finally gracing her own lips. "I'd love a glass of the Ore Reserve Brut, please." Chloe's eyes lit up. "Excellent choice. It's our new feature champagne. We're so excited to have it." She turned to prepare the drink, but a sharp, low voice cut through the cabin's quiet hum. "Chloe, a word." It was Brenda. She stood near the galley, beckoning the younger attendant with a flick of her fingers. Chloe, looking flustered, excused herself and walked over. Serafina couldn't hear their hushed, tense conversation, but she saw Brenda's eyes dart over to her cold and appraising. Chloe's shoulders slumped. She returned to Serafina's seat, her previous warmth extinguished. "I am so sorry," Chloe said, her voice barely a whisper. "There's been a slight misunderstanding. The Ore is being held for our Global Services members on this flight. It's an extremely limited stock." Serafina blinked. "Global Services? I fly this route often. That's usually not a restriction applied to the feature beverage." "It's a new policy," Brenda's voice sliced in. She had glided over her posture, ramrod straight. "Given the prestige of this particular brand, we have to ensure our most loyal clients have the first opportunity." Her eyes swept over Serafina's leggings and sweater. "I can offer you the Prosecco. It's quite pleasant." The condescension was a physical thing, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just about the champagne anymore. It was about the unspoken accusation, "You don't belong here. You can't afford this. You are not one of them." Serafina felt a familiar fatigue wash over her. It was the same exhaustion she felt when store clerks followed her in high-end boutiques or when real estate agents spoke to her male assistant instead of her. "No, thank you," Serafina said, her voice even betraying none of the fire starting to smolder in her chest. "I'll just have some water for now." Brenda gave a tight, victorious nod. "Very good." She turned and walked away, the embodiment of smug authority. The man in 2F, Mr. Davies, lowered his newspaper. He was older with kind eyes and a well-tailored suit that spoke of quiet, old money. He had overheard the entire exchange. He caught Serafina's eye and gave a slight sympathetic shake of his head, a silent acknowledgement of the injustice he'd just witnessed. Serafina gave him a small, tired smile in return. She leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. The low hum of the engines no longer sounded like victory. It sounded like a slow, burning fuse. Brenda Walsh had no idea what she had just started. The first hour of the flight passed in a tense quiet. Serafina sipped her water, the bubbles in the San Pellegrino, a silent mockery of the champagne she'd been denied. She tried to work opening her laptop to review the press release for the Beaumont deal, but the words swam before her eyes. The casual, dismissive racism had poisoned her celebratory mood, replacing it with a cold, simmering anger. The meal service began. The clink of cutlery and the hushed tones of the attendants filled the cabin. Chloe, avoiding eye contact with Serafina, served her the pan-seared salmon she'd ordered. It was then that Brenda made her next move a calculated display of power. She approached the man in 2F, Mr. Davies, holding the unmistakable bottle with the golden hummingbird. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice loud enough for Serafina to hear clearly. "I believe you are one of our esteemed Global Services members. We've been saving this for you. Our new feature champagne, Ore Reserve Brut. I'm told it's simply divine." Mr. Davies looked from Brenda to Serafina, a deep frown creasing his brow. "Is that so? And you're certain you have enough?" he asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. Brenda, oblivious or willfully ignorant, beamed. Of course, for our most valued customers. She produced a crystal flute and began to pour. The champagne fizzed a pale gold liquid, the tiny hummingbird on the label catching the light. Mr. Davies watched her, then looked at Serafina and cleared his throat. "Actually, on second thought," he said, holding up a hand. "The young lady next to me asked for that first. I'm quite happy with my scotch. Please serve her." A flicker of annoyance crossed Brenda's face. This was not part of her script. "Sir, as I explained, it's reserved." "I don't give a damn about your reservations," Mr. Davies said, his voice firm but low. "I saw what happened. It was poor form, abysmal form, in fact. Now give the lady her champagne." The cabin was silent, save for the engine's drone. Other passengers were now discreetly watching the drama unfold. Brenda's cheeks flushed a blotchy red. She was being challenged, her authority questioned in front of her clientele. She turned her icy gaze back to Serafina. "If the gentleman insists," she said through gritted teeth, as if this were a great and painful concession. She placed the glass on Serafina's tray table with a sharp click, not spilling a drop, but conveying a universe of resentment in the gesture. Serafina looked at the glass. It was her creation, her triumph, now served to her as a begrudged handout. The anger that had been simmering now reached a boiling point. It was no longer just about her. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel small, unworthy, or less than because of a prejudice they couldn't control. She took a slow, deliberate sip. The taste was familiar, and perfect notes of crisp green apple, toasted brioche, and a hint of white cherry. Her father would have loved it. The thought gave her strength. She looked up at Brenda, who was still standing there, arms crossed, waiting for a thank you that would never come. "It is divine, isn't it?" Serafina said, her voice calm and clear. "The company selected it for a reason," Brenda clipped back. "Yes, they did," Serafina agreed. She set the glass down gently. "And I should know." She reached into her Goyard tote bag, past her laptop and the contract folder, and retrieved her passport case. Tucked inside was a freshly printed copy of the latest issue of Forbes magazine. She had bought 3 at the airport newsstand to give to her mother. The cover featured a confident-looking man under the headline, "Titans of Tech." But that wasn't the page she was looking for. She flipped to page 54. It was a full-page feature in the 30 under 30 section. The headline read, "Serafina James, the vintner disrupting a billion-dollar industry." Beside the text was a large, glossy photo of her. She was standing in her vineyard, the California sun backlighting her hair, a flute of champagne in one hand, and a bottle of Auray Reserve Brut in the other. The golden hummingbird logo was clearly visible. She held the magazine up for Brenda to see. Her finger tapped her own face in the photograph. "Serafina James," she said, her voice steady and resonant, cutting through the cabin's silence. She then pointed to the bottle in the picture. "Auray Wines, my company." She lowered the magazine and looked directly into Brenda's widening, horrified eyes. She pointed to the bottle still in Brenda's hand. "That hummingbird on the label? It was my father's favorite bird. I drew the design myself on my kitchen table in Oakland." Her voice rose slightly, not in anger, but in declaration. "That name on the bottle, Auray, it's derived from aura, the energy that I believe connects all of us, the energy you chose to poison today." A collective gasp went through the cabin. Mr. Davies's jaw was literally hanging open. Chloe, standing by the galley, brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Serafina delivered the final devastating blow. You didn't reserve my champagne for your most valued customers. You denied it to its creator because you looked at my face and my clothes and decided I wasn't worthy. So I will ask you one more time. But this time, I'm not asking as a passenger. I'm asking as the founder and CEO of Ori Wines, whose product is currently elevating your airline's first-class service. May I please have another glass of my champagne? Brenda Walsh stood frozen, the color draining from her face. The bottle of Ore felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her hand. The helmet of her hair, the crispness of her uniform, the 26 years of seniority, it all melted away, leaving behind a woman utterly and completely exposed. She had not just insulted a passenger. She had insulted the brand itself embodied by the woman sitting right in front of her. At 35,000 feet, in a pressurized cabin of recycled air, Brenda Walsh suddenly terrifyingly found that she could not breathe. The silence that followed Serafina's declaration was heavier than any turbulence the 777 could ever encounter. It was a vacuum of pure, unadulterated shock. Every eye in the first-class cabin was fixed on the tableau Serafina poised and powerful in her seat. Brenda pale and trembling, looking as if she'd seen a ghost. And the bottle of Ore Reserve Brut, now the centerpiece of a career-ending disaster. It was Chloe who broke the spell. She rushed forward, took the bottle from Brenda's limp hand, and with a fresh, clean flute poured Serafina a glass, with a reverence one might reserve for a religious sacrament. "Ms. James?" Chloe stammered, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry. Please accept my deepest apologies for what happened." Serafina accepted the glass, her gaze never leaving Brenda. "Thank you, Chloe. Your apology is accepted. You were following orders." The implication was clear. The fault lay squarely with the person who gave them. Brenda finally found her voice a pathetic, strangled whisper. I didn't know. I had no idea. It was a mistake. I apologize." "A mistake," Serafina replied, her voice dangerously soft. "Was it a mistake when you decided my clothes didn't meet your first-class standards? Was it a mistake when you invented a new policy on the spot? Or was the mistake simply getting caught?" You didn't apologize for your prejudice, Brenda. You're apologizing for your ignorance, and that is not the same thing. Brenda opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. She had been so sure of her judgment, so confident in her petty tyranny, that she had never considered the possibility of being so catastrophically wrong. Mr. Davies, unable to contain himself, let out a low whistle. He leaned across the aisle. "Young lady," he said to Serafina, his voice filled with admiration. "My name is Charles Davies. I'm on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies. I've seen tough negotiations in boardrooms around the world, but I have never seen anyone handle a situation with that much grace and steel. Well done." He handed her his business card. "If you need a witness or any statement for the complaint, you will most certainly be filing. You call me." "Thank you, Mr. Davies." "I will," Serafina said, accepting the card. The rest of the flight was an exercise in extreme tension. The senior purser, a man named George, emerged from the crew rest area, his face a mask of controlled panic. He had clearly been briefed. He spent a solid 10 minutes apologizing profusely to Serafina, offering her flight vouchers a mountain of frequent flyer miles, a lifetime supply of Ore on their flights. Serafina listened patiently before cutting him off. "George, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't something you can fix with perks. This is a systemic issue. Your employee Brenda felt empowered to act on her prejudice because she felt the system would protect her. You don't need to give me free flights. You need to invest in comprehensive mandatory anti-bias and sensitivity training for your entire staff. Your problem isn't one disgruntled passenger. Your problem is a corporate culture that allowed this to happen. Meanwhile, Brenda had been relegated to the back galley, ostensibly to rest. In reality, she was having a full-blown panic attack, shielded by the flimsy curtain. Her 26-year career was flashing before her eyes, not in a blaze of glory, but as a slow-motion train wreck. Unbeknownst to the crew, the drama had not been entirely contained. A passenger in seat 3A, a tech blogger named Leo Kim, had discreetly filmed the entire exchange on his phone from Mr. Davies's intervention to Serafina's powerful reveal. As the plane began its descent into London, he was already typing out a caption. He had a decent following, and he knew a viral story when he saw one. Upon landing at Heathrow, the jet bridge had barely connected when two ground representatives from Transatlantic Air boarded the plane. They were dressed in sharp suits, their faces grim. They weren't there for a welcome. They were there for damage control. "Ms. James," one of them, a woman named Eleanor, asked, "we are here to escort you and ensure this matter is handled with the utmost seriousness." Serafina gathered her things, gave a grateful nod to Mr. Davies, and a small encouraging smile to Chloe. As she walked past the galley, she caught a glimpse of Brenda, her face tear-streaked and blotchy, her professional mask completely shattered. There was no triumph in seeing her like this, only a profound sadness for the ugliness that had caused it all. On the ground, things moved quickly. Leo Kim's video posted with the hashtags #FlyingWhileBlack and #OreAir was exploding. He had tagged Serafina Ore Wines and Transatlantic Air. The video was raw, compelling, and utterly damning. By the time Serafina was sitting in a private lounge with airline executives, the story was already the top trend on Twitter in both the US and the UK. The Vice President of Customer Experience for Europe, Amelia Vance, was pale. "Ms. James, on behalf of our entire airline, I cannot express how horrified we are. Brenda Walsh has been suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation." "The investigation should be swift," Serafina said, her voice calm but unyielding. "You have video evidence and multiple witnesses, including a board member of several major corporations. What I want to know is what Transatlantic Air is going to do to ensure this never happens to another person of color on one of your flights." The airline caught between a PR nightmare and a genuinely powerful and articulate victim was in full crisis mode. They promised committees reviews and a complete overhaul of their training programs, with Serafina acting as a paid consultant if she would be willing. The news outlets picked up the story. The New York Times, The Guardian, CNN. Champagne CEO racially profiled by flight attendant on a flight serving her own brand. The story was irresistible. Ore Wines was getting millions of dollars in free press, its founder lionized as a symbol of resilience and class. Transatlantic Air's stock, meanwhile, took a noticeable dip in pre-market trading. The war that started in the cabin of Flight 101 had moved to the ground, and it was escalating into a global media firestorm. For Serafina, it was a fight for principle. For the airline, it was a fight for survival. But for Brenda Walsh, sitting in a sterile Heathrow crew room, waiting to be formally dismissed and flown back as a passenger, the true karma had not even begun to take shape. It was waiting for her back home, in the one place she thought she was safe, in the person she loved most in the world. Brenda Walsh's home was a modest, meticulously kept two-story colonial in a quiet suburb of Long Island. It was her sanctuary, the place where she shed the stiff persona of the senior purser and became just mom. Her lawn was perfectly manicured, her windows spotless. It was a life built on order and control, a stark contrast to the chaos now engulfing her. She returned from London under a cloud of shame, instructed not to speak to the media and to await the results of an investigation that was clearly just a formality before termination. She tried to frame the narrative for her family, for her husband, Mark, a passive man who sold insurance and rarely questioned her. "It was a misunderstanding," she said, her voice brittle. "This passenger, she was deliberately trying to cause a scene. You know how some of them are, looking for a handout." But the story felt hollow even as she told it. The central damning fact that the passenger owned the champagne was something she couldn't spin. The true heart of Brenda's world, however, was her 17-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was everything Brenda wasn't: curious, open-minded, and brilliant. She had her mother's drive, but none of her bitterness. Lily was the reason Brenda worked the grueling international flights, the reason she put up with demanding passengers and jet lag. Everything was for Lily's future. And Lily's future, she had decided with a passion that bordered on obsession, was in wine. Not just drinking it, but creating it. She was a gifted chemistry student and had spent the last 2 summers volunteering at a small vineyard on the North Fork of Long Island. Her dream was to attend UC Davis for their world-renowned viticulture and enology program. Her bedroom was a shrine to this dream. Books on soil composition and grape varietals were stacked on her desk. A map of the Napa Valley was tacked to her wall. And in the place of honor right above her bed was a poster. It wasn't of a rock star or an actor. It was a glossy printout of a magazine feature. The headline read, "Serafina James, the Vintner, Disrupting $1 Billion Industry." Lily Walsh idolized Serafina James. To Lily, Serafina was a revolutionary. A young, self-made black woman who had broken into the stuffy, overwhelmingly white and male world of winemaking and created something magical. She followed Ore wines on every social media platform. She had read every interview Serafina had ever given. She'd written her main college application essay on how Serafina James's innovative approach to marketing and branding had reshaped her understanding of business. Brenda knew about her daughter's hero, of course. She'd heard the name Serafina James countless times. "Mom, look at what she's doing with sustainable farming." Or, "Mom, can you believe she built her brand from nothing?" Brenda had always dismissed it with a vague, "That's nice, dear," never bothering to look at a photo or learn any details. To her, it was just another name in a world she didn't care about. The centerpiece of Lily's ambition was the Ore Innovators Scholarship. It was a full-ride scholarship to the viticulture program of the Winner's Choice, established and funded entirely by Serafina James herself. It was notoriously competitive. The application required top grades, impeccable essays, and a video submission. Lily had poured her entire soul into it. Just last week, she had received an email informing her she was one of 5 finalists. The final step was a Zoom interview with the scholarship committee. Her dream was tantalizingly close. Brenda was in the kitchen nursing a cup of tea and a migraine when Lily burst in from school, her face glowing. "Mom, you're home early. Guess what? They sent the final interview schedule for the Ore Scholarship. It's next Tuesday," she announced, dropping her backpack on the floor. "I can't believe I'm a finalist. I might actually get to meet her." Brenda's blood ran cold. The name Ore hit her like a physical blow. It couldn't be. It was a common enough word, right? A coincidence. "Ore, what? What's the full name of the company?" Brenda asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Ore Wine's Mom. You know Serafina James's company, the one I'm always talking about," Lily said, grabbing an apple from the counter. She pulled out her phone. "Look, the story about her is everywhere today. Some crazy flight attendant was racist to her on a flight to London. Can you even imagine on transatlantic air too? That's your airline, isn't it? They should fire that woman immediately. Lily turned the phone screen toward her mother. And there it was. A news alert from CNN. The headline was stark, and below it was a still frame from Leo Kim's viral video. It showed a young, elegant black woman looking calm and resolute. And standing before her, her face a mask of pinched, ugly prejudice, was a flight attendant with sprayed blonde hair and a crisp uniform. A flight attendant who was unmistakably Brenda Walsh. The world tilted on its axis. Lily stared at the image on her phone, then looked up at her mother's ashen face. The resemblance was undeniable. The timeline, the airline, the London route, it all clicked into place with a sickening finality. "Mom," Lily's voice was a whisper of dawning horror. "No, that can't be you." Brenda stood frozen, the teacup shaking in her hand, rattling against the saucer. The lie she had constructed for herself, for her husband, crumbled into dust. She was exposed not by the airline, not by the media, but by the adoring eyes of her own daughter. Lily's face, once bright with excitement, contorted into a mask of confusion, then disbelief, then profound, gut-wrenching shame. The woman in the video, the crazy racist flight attendant, her own daughter had said, should be fired, was her mother. The woman who had insulted and humiliated her hero, Serafina James, was her mother. "Mom, what did you do?" Lily cried, tears welling in her eyes. What did you do? The foundation of Brenda's world, the manicured lawn, the spotless windows, the love and respect of her daughter, it all cracked open right there in her pristine suburban kitchen. The hard karma she had set in motion at 35,000 feet had not just landed, it had come home, and it was about to burn her entire life to the ground. The days leading up to the interview were a suffocating fog in the Walsh household. The termination letter from Transatlantic Air had arrived its corporate letterhead a formal tombstone for a 26-year career. Brenda, stripped of her uniform and authority, drifted through the house like a ghost. Her face a constant mask of puffy-eyed disbelief and simmering resentment. She would try to breach the wall of silence Lily had erected around herself, her excuses becoming more desperate and pathetic. "It was a stressful flight, Lily. You don't know what it's like," she'd say to her daughter's back as Lily did the dishes. "She was dressed like she was going to the gym. I made a judgment call. It was a mistake, that's all." Lily would just rinse the plates, her shoulders rigid. The words judgment call were the most damning of all. It confirmed that this wasn't an accident. It was a choice rooted in an ugliness Lily was only now beginning to comprehend in her own mother. The silence that followed these failed attempts was louder and heavier than any argument, thick with disillusionment and the sickening smell of a lie burning to ashes. Lily found her only refuge in the office of her school guidance counselor, a kind, no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Albright. "I have to withdraw," Lily said, her voice hollow, twisting a tissue in her hands. "How can I possibly face them? How can I ask for anything from the woman my mother attacked?" Mrs. Albright leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Lily, look at me. Is your name Brenda Walsh?" "No, but..." "Are you responsible for the choices your mother made at her job on that day?" "No, of course not, but it feels like I am." "Feelings are not facts," the counselor said gently. "The fact is, you are one of the most brilliant and passionate students I have ever had the privilege of advising. You earned your spot as a finalist. Your work earned it. Your character earned it. Withdrawing now doesn't punish your mother. It punishes you. It lets her mistake her prejudice have the final say on your future. Is that what you want?" She paused, letting the question land. "The name Walsh is on your application, Lily. What you do with it is the only thing that matters. The words were an anchor in her storm of shame. What you do with it? The thought began to take root. On the morning of the interview, Lily moved with the deliberate precision of a soldier preparing for battle. She chose her outfit carefully, a simple navy blue blazer and a white shell top. It was professional, unassuming a suit of armor. She pulled her hair back into a severe ponytail, her face scrubbed clean. As she sat down at her desk, her eyes fell on the poster above it. Seraphina James, smiling in the sun-drenched vineyard, seemed to be watching her. For a moment, Lily felt a wave of nausea. She almost tore it down. Instead, she took a deep breath, straightened her spine, and logged into the Zoom call. The digital waiting room was sterile, silent. Her own face stared back at her from the small preview window, looking pale and impossibly young. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat counting down the seconds to her judgment. Then the screen flickered, and she was admitted. 3 faces appeared. 2 were strangers. A man with a kind, professional smile, introduced as David Chen Aures, head of operations. A woman with intelligent, analytical eyes, Dr. Isabella Rossi, a renowned oenologist on the Foundation's board. And then, in the center panel, was Seraphina James. She was even more striking than in her photos, possessing a stillness that radiated power. Her expression was neutral, her focus absolute. Lily Walsh. Seraphina began her voice exactly as Lily had imagined, smooth, clear, and resonant. Welcome. We're so pleased to have you. Your application was truly exceptional. The first 20 minutes were a blur of technical questions. David Chen asked about her 5-year business plan for a hypothetical micro-winery, Doctors. Rossi quizzed her on the challenges of malolactic fermentation in cool climate Chardonnays. Lily, fueled by adrenaline and years of dedicated study, answered flawlessly. The terror receded, replaced by the familiar comfort of her own expertise. She could see the impressed looks on their faces. Dr. Rossi nodded enthusiastically at her explanation of soil microbiology. David Chen jotted down notes, a genuine smile on his face. She was against all odds, winning them over. Throughout it all, Seraphina remained mostly silent, listening. Her gaze was the most unnerving. It felt as though she wasn't just hearing Lily's answers, but was looking straight through them, assessing the core of the person speaking. Finally, David and Isabella finished their questions. The atmosphere in the virtual room shifted. It was Seraphina's turn. Lily, thank you. That was very impressive, she said. I have just one final question for you. The Aure brand is built on more than just good wine. It's built on a story of passion, resilience, and breaking down barriers. Tell us about a time you faced a significant personal challenge and how it shaped your character. The air left Lily's lungs. This was it. The crossroads. The well-rehearsed generic answer about overcoming a difficult chemistry class died on her lips. She looked at Seraphina's searching eyes and knew that any answer other than the raw, terrifying truth would be a profound lie, a betrayal of everything she'd just claimed to be. She took a breath. Her hands hidden below the desk were clenched into fists. The biggest challenge of my life, she began, her voice a fragile tremor, is happening right now, in this room. David Chen's smile faltered. Dr. Rossi's pen froze above her notepad. My hero. Lily continued, her voice gaining a sliver of strength as she committed to the path. The person whose career and vision inspired my own dream is you, Ms. James. Your story is the reason I want to be in this industry. She paused, the next words catching in her throat like shards of glass. And the person who caused you such public pain and humiliation last week, was my mother. The confession landed in the pristine professional space of the Zoom call with the force of a physical blow. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of the computer. Tears, hot and unstoppable, began to stream down Lily's face, but she forced herself to continue to look directly into the camera. My mother was Brenda Walsh, the flight attendant on Transatlantic 101. When I saw that video, it broke my world. It broke my heart for you, for the dignity you fought to maintain. And it broke my heart to know that the person I love, my own mother, was the source of such ugliness. The prejudice she showed you is the antithesis of everything I believe in and everything I hope to contribute. She looked at Serafina, her vision blurred by tears. I almost withdrew. I felt I had no right to be here asking for a gift from the very person my family has wronged so deeply. But I realized that running away would mean letting her actions define my future. My challenge isn't just dealing with the shame of what she did. It's about proving to myself and to the world that prejudice is not a legacy. It's not a genetic trait passed from parent to child. It's a choice. And I am choosing a different path. She finished, her entire body trembling, spent. She had laid her soul bare, and now she waited for the axe to fall. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then Serafina James leaned forward, her composure unbreached, but her eyes filled with a new complex light. She was no longer just an interviewer. She was the woman on the plane reliving the sting of that moment, and now faced with its most unexpected collateral damage. A brilliant, heartbroken girl who bore the face of her tormentor. The easy path was to say no. It was just. It was understandable. No one would blame her, but Serafina's entire life had been about refusing the easy path. Thank you for your honesty, Lily, she said, her voice softer now. That took a degree of courage I have seldom witnessed. She looked at the other stunned board members, then back at Lily. Legacy. Serafina said the word hanging in the air. It's a powerful thing. We inherit things from our parents, our eye color, our last names. But we do not have to inherit their fears or their limitations or their prejudices. Every single person in every generation gets to decide what their own legacy will be. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Serafina's lips. It was a smile of recognition, of respect. The Ori Innovator Scholarship is designed to find the future of the wine industry. The future, by its very definition, must be better than the past. It must be smarter, kinder, and more courageous. She held Lily's gaze, a powerful, unbreakable connection forged through the screen. Congratulations, Lily. The board is unanimous. The scholarship is yours. A choked sob escaped Lily's lips, a sound of such profound cathartic relief that it seemed to physically shake her. The tension that had held her ramrod straight for days finally shattered, and she wept openly, not from shame, but from the overwhelming shock of grace. Your mother's story does not have to be your story, Serafina concluded, her voice now filled with a firm, empowering warmth. Your legacy starts now. Go, and make it a beautiful one. A year can feel like a lifetime, or the blink of an eye. For the three women whose lives intersected at 35,000 feet, it was both. The world at large had moved on the news cycle, churning through 100 other outrages and triumphs. But in the quiet, private spaces of their lives, the seeds sown on Flight 101 had yielded their inevitable, life-altering harvest. For Brenda Walsh, the harvest was one of bitter desolation. The karma that found her was not a sudden dramatic lightning strike, but a slow, grinding erosion of everything she had built her identity upon. The first casualty was her home. Selling the pristine two-story colonial was like presiding over the funeral of her own life. On the final day, she walked through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on the bare hardwood floors. This was the house she and Mark had bought, with their combined savings, the place where she'd brought Lily home from the hospital. Now it was just a shell stripped of memories, filled only with the ghost of her pride. Mark had left 2 months prior. His departure wasn't angry or dramatic. It was worse. It was weary. "I don't know who you are anymore, Bren," he'd said, sitting at the kitchen table she was now forced to sell. "Or maybe I never really knew. That bitterness. I saw it sometimes, but I ignored it. I enabled it. And now look at us. I can't live inside this shame with you." He packed a single suitcase and moved into a soulless apartment complex across town, leaving behind not just a wife, but the hollowed-out idea of who he thought she was. Friends who once admired her seniority and world travels now treated her like a contagion. Voicemails went unreturned. Invitations stopped coming. Fired and blacklisted her name a red flag in any airline or customer service database. Her job search was a series of quiet humiliations. Finally, desperation led her to a temp agency that didn't ask too many questions. She found work as a night shift cleaner at a massive food processing facility near the airport. The anonymity was both a mercy and a punishment. Her world shrank to the smell of industrial disinfectant, the drone of conveyor belts, and the relentless hum of refrigeration units. In a bitterly ironic twist, the plant's primary contract was with airline catering companies. Each night, Brenda would scrub floors and sanitize countertops, her hands raw while watching stainless steel carts being loaded with neatly packaged meals destined for the very first-class cabins she once ruled. Through the grimy windows, she'd see the lights of planes ascending into the darkness, each one a phantom limb, a reminder of the status the uniform, and the respect she had incinerated in a single prejudiced act. One night, shivering in the break room during her 3 a.m. lunch, she saw a discarded magazine on the table. The cover was glossy and bright, a stark contrast to the room's fluorescent gloom. On it, 2 women were laughing, bathed in the golden light of a California sunset, a vineyard stretching out behind them. One was the achingly familiar face of Serafina James. The other was her daughter, Lily. The headline read, "The New Face of American Wine." Serafina James and her protégée, Lily Walsh, on cultivating a kinder future. Brenda's hands trembled as she picked it up. She read a quote from Lily. "My mentor taught me that the best fertilizer for growth is grace." The words were alien from a world her daughter now inhabited, a world Brenda had locked herself out of. She stared at Lily's face, so full of joy, confidence, and purpose. It was a happiness her daughter had found not because of her, but in spite of her. Brenda dropped the magazine as if it had burned her. She closed her eyes, but the image was seared onto the back of her eyelids. The sting of her failure was no longer just an ache. It was the defining condition of her soul, permanent and incurable. For Lily Walsh, that same year was a renaissance. The Ore Innovators Scholarship was more than money. It was a key that unlocked her entire future. At UC Davis, she was not Brenda Walsh's daughter. She was simply Lily, the brilliant student with an intuitive gift for oenology. She immersed herself in the science and art of winemaking, her confidence growing with every successful titration in the lab, with every complex tasting note she could identify. Serafina James became her mentor, in truth, not just in title. She saw in Lily not a project or an act of charity, but a reflection of her own younger, hungry self. She flew Lily out to the Ore vineyard for a weekend. Standing between rows of thriving vines, Serafina had looked at her and said, "Your mother gave you a name, Lily. What you make of it is entirely up to you. Don't run from it. Build on it. Build something so beautiful that it eclipses the memory of what it once was. That advice became Lily's mantra. During her summer internship at Ore, she proved its wisdom. She worked tirelessly, her hands in the soil, her mind absorbing everything. The vineyard workers who knew the whole story judged her not by her parentage, but by her work ethic and her kind, open heart. She was writing her own story, chapter by chapter, in the dirt in the lab, and in the respectful way she treated everyone around her. She still loved her mother, but it was a distant, grieving love. On Brenda's birthday, she sent a simple, unsent card with a picture of a hummingbird on it. It was not forgiveness, not yet. It was a quiet acknowledgement of a broken bond and a testament to the grace that was now the guiding principle of her life. And for Serafina James, the incident on Flight 101 became her crucible. Ore wines, already successful, transformed into a global phenomenon. The hummingbird logo was no longer just a brand. It was a symbol of quiet defiance of grace under pressure. People didn't just buy the champagne. They bought into its story. Sales funded a massive expansion of the Ore Foundation, but Serafina's true victory was systemic. She channeled her righteous anger into constructive action, personally spearheading the creation of the Aura Initiative. She stood before rooms of skeptical airline executives and weary veteran crews, and she didn't lecture. She told her story. She made them feel the sting of humiliation, the heat of injustice, and then she showed them a better way. The empathy-based program was adopted by Transatlantic Air, and then 2 other major carriers, becoming a new industry standard. Her final visit to her mother in London was a quiet bookend to the ordeal. Her mother, frail and fading in a sterile hospital bed, saw a news report about the initiative on the small television. She couldn't speak much, but she squeezed Serafina's hand, her eyes bright with a fierce, final pride. "Your father," she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. "He always said you had a fire in you. Look at the world you've warmed with it." Her mother passed away a week later, leaving Serafina with the peace of that last cherished memory. The harvest had come for them all. Brenda, from her seeds of prejudice, reaped a life of lonely ruin. Lily, planted in new soil and nurtured by grace, cultivated a future of boundless promise. And Serafina, from a bitter moment of injustice, harvested a movement. The story proved that karma is not merely a cosmic ledger of punishment and reward. It is a clarifying light, relentless and profound, that ultimately reveals who we are, strips away our pretenses, and shows us the stark, beautiful, and terrible truth of what we have chosen to become. The story of Serafina, Brenda, and Lily is a powerful reminder that our actions, even the ones we think are small, create ripples that can become tidal waves. It's a story of prejudice and power, but ultimately, it's a story of character. Brenda's character led to her downfall. Serafina's character led to transformational change. And Lily's character allowed her to rise from the ashes of her mother's mistakes to build her own better future. It shows us that true strength isn't just about standing up for yourself, but also in knowing when to offer a hand to someone else, even when you have every right not to. What did you think of this incredible story of karmic justice and unexpected grace? Who do you think the story was hardest on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as compelling as I did, please hit that like button, Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more true-life dramas. Every click helps us bring these powerful stories to light. Thank you for listening.